Hey Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, John. Always great to see you.
Yeah, I'm really been looking forward to talking about Buddhism. So, if you remember last time we talked, you had met your emotional master and you spent 4 months in India living in a monastery. And then what happened?
Yeah, this is probably one of my most exciting but also painful parts of my life. So I left India, you know, I didn't want to leave. I was like, Geshe-la, like, I want to stay here. I want to be a monk. And he says, oh no, you go back to America, you study this curriculum, you sort things out with your family, and then we decide later if you become a monk. So I come back. This is like, again, 2008. If you remember, the economy crashed.
Yeah.
And it was just like everything I thought I would do was just falling apart. Like all my plans were falling apart. Meanwhile, in my heart, all I'm thinking about is like, why am I doing any of this? Like what I want doesn't cost any money. Just be a monk. And I get to study the most interesting thing I've ever encountered. I didn't even know, actually, I was just getting the first taste of it. And so I come back, and yeah, it was really tough. A lot of things just fell apart for me. And when I went to India, I've been studying yoga. I had mentioned, like Ayurveda, all the what we call the Vedic sciences based on the Vedas. Now we call it Hinduism, but it really goes back to the Vedas. And I obviously encountered Buddhism since university. I had studied Buddhism, but I was really much more drawn to the Hinduism with all the different gods, and everything was symbolic. It just seemed more magical to me. And Buddhism just always seemed a little bit more dry. But here I am coming back, and everything's falling apart, and all these gods, Hindu gods and astrology was not helping me. Like my life still fell apart. I'm miserable. So, and also, being around the monks in India, I was being like, originally I was much more into the yoga, and the Buddhism was down here. Coming back from India, it was, or being with the monks, it was kind of balanced, spending that time with Geshe-la. But then when I came home, I really started taking the Buddhism stuff more serious. I started reading the curriculum that Geshe-la had given me, and I was just like, wow, this doesn't require any faith. This is straight logic. It was just clicking like, and for the first time reading the Buddha's words, it was like, this is who I've been looking for. This He's speaking exactly to the issues that I'm speaking of. I'm going through suffering. The Buddha says, like, you're not ready for my teachings until you know what suffering is.
So what's all the suffering you were going through?
I mean, so my parents, and I were probably in the worst place of our life. We were good for a while, and then after India, and they were in, like I said, my mom now is dating a new guy, and she was in her own world, and I just felt like I changed a lot from India, so it was just hard for me to really fit in. So I have like I would obviously put it all on me, but at the time, the economy. So I had to take like odds and end jobs that I never saw myself doing.
So you were running out of money.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. So up until this point, I always managed to be able to attract money pretty easily. But this time, for the first time, I'm like, oh, what do I do?
So where'd you live?
So at the time, I had an apartment, but then I wound up getting a place with Jim and another guy. We lived in a
Nice.
two-bedroom place. So as you can imagine, the rent was very low, and as I'm studying the Buddhist stuff, I was just getting more and more into it. This is all I care about. It was like what we call like a refuge. I was realizing, in the early Buddhist training, it's learning about, we all go for refuge. We all go for safe passage in something. Some people it's money. There's something that we have faith in, you can say, whether we acknowledge it or not. So I was gaining faith in what we call the three jewels: the Buddha, this man who started off just like us, who was concerned with suffering. Like he was, quick story about the Buddha. he was probably the richest man in the world at the time. He was a prince, and he had, at a young age, he had everything you could imagine, and he excelled at everything. He was the best at everything, the smartest, the most athletic, wrestling, archery. He studied the Vedas. He studied Ayurveda, all of the Hindu scriptures. He was a master of all of that. And his father didn't want him to see the outside world. So anytime like an animal or a person got sick, he would take them away. So Buddha, the Shakyamuni, his name was Gautama at the time, would never see a sick person. And then one day he goes out of the castle and encounters a sick person, a dying person, a yogi, sick, dying, dead, old age, dead, and a suffering being. I'm sorry, and a yogi, and someone like naked guy just meditating. And he asked his charioteer, what are these things? And he said, will I get old? Will I die? Will I get sick? And that was when the Buddha, with everything in the world, realized, I can't avoid these four things. No matter what, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to die. What's the point of all this? Which drove him to leave the castle, give up everything he had, including his wife and son. And he had he had a harem of hundreds of women. He left it all, shaved his head, went and lived like a beggar in the wilderness, training with these yogis at the time, practicing these tantric practices, and torturing his body. And through that practice, he was able to get to a high level of meditation and bliss. But he knew this is impermanent. There's more, this is not going to last, no matter how high a state I'm going to get. And that's when he eventually became a Buddha. So I'll stop there.
So that's the first gem, is the Buddha, the teacher.
Right. So he was a person who conquered suffering. And then so that's the first one. Then for 40 plus years, he's traveled all across India. He was the biggest celebrity in India, went back to his kingdom where his father was. And his father, his wife, everybody's so mad at him. You left us. How could you leave us? And then he's like, I found something I vowed to protect my son. Now I could never protect my son from suffering. Now I have something that will truly protect my son. And then his son became a monk also, and reached Buddhahood also. So that's the first one. The second one is him teaching all the teachings he left us, which amounts to libraries worth of teachings. Because at the time, this is going to sound hard to believe, but back then, people didn't write things down. Right. So his assistant memorized every single thing he said word for word for 40 years. And then the other close disciples, after Buddha passed away, they all came together and had a council, and they all repeated word for word, and they were able to put together the canon.
So that's the teachings. What's the teachings called?
The Dharma.
The Dharma. So the Buddha, the Dharma, and what's the third?
And then the Sangha means the community. So
last time, yeah.
Yeah. So the community is, the Buddha, was here, but now 2,600 years later, across time and space, you could say, the people who uphold these teachings, who, and also, I wouldn't say modify the teachings, but adapt the teachings for the different cultures. So it started in India. It spread to China, Japan, Korea, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, up to Tibet, now in America. So the community is the people, the lamas who, the gurus, the teachers who are able to adapt it to the culture.
Right. So your Buddha was Geshe-la, your Dharma was the information he brought back to you. And then who was your Sangha? It sounds like you were living with Jim. There was any other Sangha?
Yes, you could say that. And also, so living in New York, there's tons of Buddhist masters coming. So I would go to all these different sanghas. So you go to this place, there's a Buddhist sangha. They call it a sangha, like a little community over there. But I've always kind of been never belonging to one sangha. I've always been this is all my sangha. If I could learn, if anyone can teach me, and I would go to the Sangha, but I'd go right to the teacher and I'd be like, I have all these questions. Teach, what does this mean? What does this mean? So I spent a lot of time in these different, Geshe-la had a lot of friends he would introduce me to. Oh, go study with this person. So that's what I went on to do.
So tell me about the studying. What did that look like?
Yeah, so once I realized like this curriculum that Geshe-la had introduced me to was exactly what I was looking for, and this was my refuge. So I went for refuge. I still don't call myself a Buddhist because a true Buddhist, we are processes. Everything is a process. So there's no thing. So you can't be anything, right? Technically, but I practice Buddhism. But one of many masters say you become a Buddhist when you go for refuge, when you truly believe that this is it. I've tried everything. I've tried getting money. I've tried falling in love. I've tried, all of those things. If I follow them to their logical conclusion, they lead to suffering in the end. The more I have, eventually I'm going to lose it all. So when I realized like this is my refuge, I was studying so much for years, but this was it. I've never been more passionate about anything. And I've lost interest in things throughout my whole life. The Buddha Dharma, this has been the continuous thread. So from the moment I woke up, I was on the toilet reading. I'm literally, I didn't have a car at the time. I didn't have a cell phone. I was walking to the train station, which was like a 20-minute walk the entire time. If I wasn't running for the train, I was reading. I'm waiting for the train, I'm reading. I'm on the train, reading. Off the train, reading. At work, reading. Everything I was doing, I was studying the whole day. And so basically, again, the rent was very low. So I only had to work at a couple days a week, teaching a little bit. I was able to pay rent and just study, meditate, and make food for Jim, make tea for Jim, and do yoga with Jim.
So, and it was all clicking for you, right? You were getting it?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like I wanted to become a Geshe. I'm like, I want to learn everything Geshe-la did in 20 years. I'm going to do this in 5 years.
Well, then, so wow, okay. So who were you debating with? Did you have anybody to debate with?
Well, like mostly like that's the crazy thing. Like I was able to debate in my own head like very well.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother story that you could say from my past lives and everything. But yeah, I would debate with Geshe-la. We get on weekly calls when he was around. And again, like I would see the other monks, the other lamas who were visiting, his friends, and I would come with like questions and I would really like it
Nice.
would turn into debates and they loved it.
Nice. Nice.
Because
Nice.
most
So
people
let's
are
get
like,
it.
oh, can you bless my family? Tell me about this. And I would be like, what does this mean? Like and like the most difficult questions.
Nice. So let's get into it. So, like, what's like the foundation of Buddhism? How would you describe the
Okay,
foundation?
right. So they say that like all the footprints of all the animals in the forest can fit inside the elephant footprint. All of the Dharma, the 84,000 teachings can fit within the four truths.
Okay.
Sometimes they translate the four noble truths, but it's really the four truths of the noble ones. The noble ones are the ones who see reality. So one thing that is so beautiful about Buddha is he grew up in a Hindu culture and they had this beautiful language called Sanskrit. And what Buddha did was he took all these words like karma, dharma, suffering, and he changed them in such it's a whole other conversation. But yeah, so he took the word Arya, which means noble, and he turned it into those who see reality, whereas it used to be people who were powerful in the military. He took a lot of military words and symbolism and turned them into conquering your inner demons.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah.
what are these
So
four noble truths?
so
Give me number one.
the first one is suffering. So a lot of people mistranslate this and say Buddha said all life is suffering. That's what you hear all the time when you talk to Buddhist people. Oh, Buddha said all life is suffering. He did not say. He just said suffering exists technically. But really, if you really want to expand on it, what it means is um, kind of like what Plato I think said: the unexamined life is not worth living, kind of thing. It's like until if you don't examine your reality, if you just like following your sense pleasures, anything conditioned, anything that you can get conditioned based on conditions is ultimately going to come to an end. It's impermanent. Anything that comes together through conditions is going to come apart. So anything conditioned is suffering. That's the first one.
Okay.
So
Okay. I'm with you. What's the second one?
and there's three types of suffering. There's the obvious suffering, like you stub your toe. Then there's the not so obvious suffering, is when you have something great and then you lose it, which Buddha said is even worse than the obvious suffering. And then the third suffering is the real root of it all. It's the suffering that's caused by the ignorance of not examining this situation, not understanding. So that's the three.
Okay.
That's the first truth. The second truth is called the origin, meaning that everything has a cause. Every suffering has a cause. And if you can eliminate the cause upstream, you eliminate all the suffering. So the Buddha is now making a promise, like all of that suffering, which 99% of people are experiencing, you can actually once and for all get rid of it, for it to never return.
He's making a promise based on causality, which I like. So,
yes, exactly.
This is cool. This is cool.
Yeah,
okay, what's
very
number
high.
three?
It's very first principles. And what is the causality? It's our own afflictions. It's nothing external. It's not a curse. It's not an original sin.
Right.
Oh, you could say it's an original sin because we kind of start with it, but this is just like hatred, addiction, jealousy, pride, and then going back to that ignorance. And then you could say even deeper than those five is what's called the conceptual obscurations. And basically the root of it all is the view that a self exists in people, and that there's a self in phenomena. It's a complicated concept. We'll get into it in a little bit.
Nice. Okay, the third one.
The third one is, once the causes are eliminated, what is left over is the unconditioned, uncompounded, permanent, opposite of suffering, blissful. So there's dukkha is suffering, sukha is bliss. So this is saying that if you can get rid of the clouds of suffering, you could see the clear sky, which is your true nature.
Okay. Okay, good. And then the fourth one?
The fourth one is the Dharma. Remember, you're going for refuge in the Dharma. The Dharma is the Buddhist teaching. So sometimes called the Eightfold Path. But basically, it's brilliant the way he set up these four. Because the fourth one, by doing the fourth one, brings about the third one. And the third one eliminates the second one, and the second one eliminates the first one. But basically, like, he's telling you this is the result. You could say like a good salesperson. He's telling you the benefits first, and then he's saying, here's how you get there. So the Dharma, the fourth one, is everything, the 84,000 teachings that are going to achieve that state.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, great. So how do you learn 84,000 statements? What was the curriculum that Geshe gave you?
So this is a very traditional curriculum going back hundreds of. It was refined, but it really goes back like thousands of years, like almost to the time of the Buddha. Let me see. Basically, like, to become a Geshe, they summarize it into 5 topics.
Okay.
5 main topics. Those 84,000 can be fit into like 5 topics that you study in this curriculum. So I have some books here I'm going to show you. So the first topic, and this is not in the order, like you kind of study them all together. It's all interwoven, but I'm just going to present it in a logical order. So the first topic, this is a book. It's called the Jataka Tales.
Okay.
And this is I show that book because that's part of it. It's really studying the discipline.
Okay.
You're learning karma. But as an early monk, you don't really have to know the details on how karma works. But you're reading the stories of the Buddha from his past lives. And in that process of learning these stories, these like Aesop's fables, you're learning how karma works. Like one's funny story, like a bird one time flew over the Buddha while he was teaching and pooped on him. And because even though it was like kind of bad karma, he made a connection with the Buddha, and in future lifetimes he became the Buddha student. So you're learning how a monk, gives into jealousy and now has to spend like millions of years in hell. So
So
there's
there's
like
so the stories, and the stories are trying to teach karma,
causality.
causality,
Exactly.
karma. Would you
Karma is
say
causality.
ethics?
And then so you're learning that, but then you're also learning ethics. So there's vows. So you're learning to take vows, and also why the vows work. So in our common sense thinking, if I want money, if I want to make a lot of money, I have to save money, right? Whereas according to Buddha, if you want to make money, you have to give to people. If you want
Right,
abundance, you need to help others have it. So it's
right.
counterintuitive. So it's all these counterintuitive things.
So how
But
many
then,
vows are there?
well, for like a novice monk, there's like 221, I think.
Wow.
And some of them can't be practiced now. But yeah, but it is a very disciplined lifestyle.
Okay. So
So
that's the first
that's
that's the first book.
that's the first topic. Yeah. The second one is called the Abhidharma, and
Okay.
this translates into the higher sciences. And so this is trying to give definitions, non-contradictory definitions for everything internal and everything external
Wow.
and everything in between, which is like,
How thick was that book again?
well, this actually doesn't look like that thick, but it's
Oh, it looks
very thin
thick though.
pages. Yeah, it's 1,200 pages.
Nice.
Yeah, very small, very thin pages. Yeah,
Nice.
so yeah, I mean, defining everything from like what is fire? Fire is that which is hot and burns. So
Okay.
before you could even begin the quest, well, I shouldn't say before, but if you really want to do this the right way, if you have the luxury, we call it the leisure, the karmic, if you have the karma to be able to study unhindered, like a monk, or like me, who wasn't a monk but created this opportunity, this is the way to do it, is to learn all the definitions first. So then when you start to debate and you start to get into the path, now we're all on the same page with the definition. So this explains 51 mental states, 51 processes that happen in the mind.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, for example, there's a concept I'm going to tell you in the next topic. Um, but like one of the principles is like when we say mind, it means like a moment of mind. So hatred and love can't exist in the same moment of mind.
Okay.
So there's all types of really cool stuff. So
Well, you talked last time about the frames.
exactly.
So those are different frames.
Exactly. So
Nice.
that brings me to the next topic. So that one's a very
Debate. Here we
yeah.
go.
So this is the topic of epistemology. When I came back, I read this book front to cover 4 times, and it goes over a lot of debates. But really, what this is getting at, this is epistemology, right? We call it
Okay.
pramana, which means correct ways of knowing. Um, translates. But what it's getting at is one of the main things it's driving at is and this is the difference between Western thought, Aristotelian worldview versus a Buddha, or we call Dharmakirti. Dharmakirti was, see, all these topics the Buddha taught, but then these 5 topics, each one of them had one particular master who came about
Right.
after the Buddha,
Right.
usually around like 1st century to the 4th century, who specialized, who took the Buddha's words. And like, so this debate stuff, the Buddha never taught debate, but this guy Dharmakirti and Vasubandhu, they took the Buddha's dialogue and used that and created a debate system to debate with the, because during that time there were a lot of Hindus in India who were like criticizing Buddhism. So this guy created this way to debate with them.
Wow.
So what's so fascinating when you mention the frames, this is this is a major transformation. We don't say that even in the beginning, things, we don't say this exists, a pen exists, TV exists. We say it arises. So
Okay.
like when we say like this pen, it arose, right? And then the next moment, it's almost like a new pen arose because everything's changed within it. So we don't talk about things, we talk about arising. So this book is training you to speak and think in terms of arisings. And so that's that. So and that's why, like, so this is about how we know what we know, epistemology. So there's so unlike other systems, like, you know, if you read like the Torah, the Talmud, they'll say like this is an authoritative scripture. You can't question anything beyond this. They'll debate, you know, the rabbis will debate, but there's a certain point when you can't go. There's certain things you can't debate. Whereas in the Buddhist teaching, you could debate everything, every little thing. In fact, how this book starts off, it only starts off with one like assumption. Like in other words, we start off with colors. So we say red. So if someone doesn't agree that red is red, you can't even debate with them. They're not ready to debate. So we start off with something sensory that we could all agree upon, and then from that sensory, we do what's called inference. So in other words, I can't see, for example, I can't see that water freezes at 32 degrees, but it does. Right. So even though you can't with my eyes can't look at water and know it will freeze at 32, but through inference, it will. Yeah. So that's
we know it through it. We know it through inference.
We know it through. So the famous thing that Buddha talks about is impermanence. So when you look at anything, everything is always changing. That's why we call it arising. So you can't see that impermanence, that fluctuation in things, but through inference you could learn it's there. So this is learning how to be really sharp at cause and effect and inference.
Wow. Okay, number 4. What's number 4?
Okay, this is the big one.
Oh, 3 of them. Wow.
Well, there's actually a lot more, but yeah, this is it's called the Prajnaparamita Sutras. So this is explaining the whole path. Buddhism is, when people say, is Buddhism a religion? It's a path. Buddhism is a path. So what is the path? The path is not going anywhere. And when you get to the advanced teachings, we say that the base or the beginning or the foundation, the path, and the goal are all the same, actually.
Okay.
But so, in other words, again, this is not like just supposed to be believed. You get there through a lot of obviously studying, but I can just fast forward a little bit and say that it becomes evident that the Buddha, like everything, if we're like divine beings, you can't go from the profane to the sacred. Sacred, it has to be sacred. So we call the Buddha nature is the deepest level of ourself, but it's covered with obscurations, like a diamond in the rock. The diamond never changes, but it's covered with the rock. Remember, going back to the 4 truths, the rock is the causes of the suffering, the afflictions.
Right. So the goal is to remove the rock.
Exactly. So the whole path, this whole book, which is based. So when I say path, it's actually 5 paths, and it's very significant. It's very as an engineer, you would love this because it's almost like a machine. And so the first path, I'll go through this real quickly because this is obviously a lot.
Yeah.
First path is called the path of accumulation. So this is where you're practicing the discipline. You're practicing the meditation, and you're practicing, epistemology and the ontology stuff with a lot of effort. The first part is you need a lot of effort because we're so habituated to all of the vices. Right. So this is like a lot of effort. But then through time, you start to get very good at what's called jhana meditation, almost like being able to still your mind, really gaining, anyone can go for refuge. Oh, I go for refuge, Oh, I'm a Buddhist now, I went for refuge. It's like there's in word, but then going for refuge in actuality. Like there's a point
actually doing it. Right.
There's a point when you get to when you when you just can feel this is working, and it becomes obvious. You gain a certain understanding of cause and effect and karma that at this point it's pointless to harm somebody. It's only going to hinder me. I'm going for refuge in Buddha. I want the Four Noble Truths. I'm trying to clear away my afflictions. There's no point in harming people. So when you put a lot of effort, then you reach the second path where you're focusing on the fifth topic, which I'll show you in a second. The second topic is when your meditation is good, you have good karma. You're not because when you have bad karma, you could say on a psychological level, you have a lot of guilt. You have a guilty conscience, so you have an agitated mind. So the first path you can say is about getting rid of that agitated mind. The second path, now your mind is controllable. You have to get to a certain point when you've developed that muscle to focus. So the second path is really focusing on what is reality, what is a person, and what is a self, and I'm sorry, and what really exists. So again, this is a fifth topic, which I'll show you in a second. And then, so the second path is you're really, we call it penetrating. You're really using logic, question everything. Don't take anything for granted. So that's the second path. And that second path has 4 subparts, and each one you're eliminating. So like, for example, the first one is like, you could say most people, the average person hasn't entered any of these paths, right? So they just see a tree, it's a tree. They see a pineapple, it's a pineapple. But if you really look at it, is it a pineapple? If you break it down, it's made up of countless parts. So there's no pineapple, there's really parts. So that's the first step. Then you start to say, you question like, well, how do I know there's anything outside? Because I have a dream, and in my dream, things appear to be separate from me, but it's really only my mind. So you really start to take nothing, and this really triggers people when you start questioning. So this is really not for the faint of heart. But for me, this was like the greatest thing I've ever discovered, is that things don't exist the way they seem they are.
Right. So with the third path?
The third path is this is very, even the third path is very, very advanced. It's called the path of seeing. It's like, after using logic and using a conceptual, using inference. Remember, you're like, there's 2 ways of knowing: direct perception and inference. So the second path is you're understanding that things don't exist. You're peeling away layers of reality, but you're doing it through the medium of an inference. The second you get to the point when you see reality directly, which is indescribable, you enter the third path, which is also called the first of the 10 bhumis, the grounds, levels. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot. But having reached the having reached the third path, you could say like, you've come a long way, and you become an Arya. Remember the 4 noble truths, the truths of the Aryas. You're no longer a human anymore at that point. You are a whole different thing. Your mind has reached a point, has eliminated, remember the diamond with the rock. You've eliminated enough. You could see the diamond now. You know you're the diamond. There's no going back. But you still have.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you got 2 paths left. What happens next?
You still have the residual afflictions. You still have, but so now from 2 to 10 is the fourth path, okay. The path of familiarization or integration. So now you've seen reality, you know it, but you still have habitual tendencies of seeing things the wrong way, especially when you're not meditating. When you're meditating, you see reality very clearly on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all along the fourth path. I know with these numbers it's confusing, but on the fourth path, you're continuously refining what you saw on the third path and just peeling away more and more subtle levels.
Okay.
And each level you peel away, not only do you experience more peace and bliss, but you also become infinitely more helpful to all beings.
Okay.
So this path is always, I didn't say this in the beginning, but what drives this whole path, you could say, or the fuel that takes you along this path, is compassion.
Okay.
What we call bodhicitta. So you're on this path for yourself. There is no more important thing. This is the purpose of life, according to the Buddha, to those who have faith in this. But
So the fifth path?
and the fifth path is when you clear away everything, and it's called the path of
Okay.
no more learning. That's then you're done, and now you're a
So
Buddha.
it sounds like the first path is this effort.
Hmm.
Basically, you're making all this effort to like clear this stuff.
Exactly.
And then the second step is that you are you're starting to make progress in clearing the stuff. And then the third is you see the diamond,
Hmm.
you see it. The
Yes.
fourth is you basically build that bigger or build your perspective
Yes. Yes.
bigger till you finally fifth path have achieved it. So is this is would you say the fifth step is this awakened intelligence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because
Okay.
it's the same that awakened intelligence is like is going through. When I say going through, it's like arising each moment.
Yep.
But then each moment there's all this clutter that arises in a fraction of a second. Like
Right.
we feel this incredible bliss, and the second that happens, it's just covered by layers of identity and preconceived notions, and even on an unconscious level, most of it's unconscious. So even if you say, "Oh, that's why the second path," it actually gave me a good idea. Like the second path is more consciously dealing with reality, trying to penetrate. The
Right.
third path is when you're able to just completely start changing the unconscious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what was the fifth?
And then the fifth one, this is the real this is the real fun one.
They
It's
all
not
sound fun so
yeah,
far.
they're all fun, yeah. But this one's very popular, and unfortunately in the West people like, "Oh, this is the highest thing, so we'll just study this." This is what's called ontology, which means like what exists. So
Okay.
epistemology, the second one is like, how do we know?
Right.
The fifth one dealing with ontology, what actually exists. So when I mentioned earlier, the second of the five paths
Yep.
is where you're studying this. Like you
Right. So
learn
you're trying to figure out what exists. Yeah, and it's
exactly,
an
and
effort. It's
like
effort. Yeah.
and you're looking like, is a person like I'm a person? Well, what's a person? Some people say it's my body, but your body is always changing. Oh no, I'm my mood. Like I'm a jolly person. This is yeah, but even a jolly person has a bad day, so you can't like if you were your feelings, your feelings change. That can't be you because if you're saying that there is a person, definition non-contradictory definition of a person is a like a independent self is a person. So it's like that implies that like I'm always me, but then you find out that that person actually doesn't exist.
Right. But it's interesting. You're giving an example on ontology, and you've already gone back to definitions and debating.
Exactly.
So I can see how
All
these are
connected.
just all they're all connected.
It's so connected. Exactly. So
So
me,
this
instead of following the traditional monk curriculum, I am just devouring this stuff. Like
right.
all five at once.
So this is the emptiness thing, right?
Yes, the fifth one. The fifth one is about emptiness.
Okay. Do you want to explain a little bit about
A
that?
little bit, yeah, because this again, it's very tricky. But you could say like, okay, so there's two types of negation. There's affirmative negation and non-affirmative negation, or non-implicative negation. So if I say like, um, I have a coin in one of my hands, and you point to this hand, and it's not in this one, that implies it's in this one. Right?
Okay.
That's called an implicative negation or an affirming negation. A non-affirming negation is when something is just not there and it doesn't affirm something be there. It just
Okay.
eliminates something. So when we look for so what Buddha said, the second truth, the cause of all our suffering, even why we if you can go deeper than hatred and addiction and lust and jealousy. If you can get to this, all of that is based on this preconceived notion that a self exists in people and things. So what I'm getting at is when you don't look for it, it exists. But when you look for something through all this training and logic and you find out that what you thought exists doesn't exist, that's emptiness.
Okay.
It means it never was there in the first place. It's not that you got rid of it. It's not that you eliminated it. That's a whole Buddhist path. You're not adding and you're not subtracting. You're only
You're understanding reality,
you're understanding
basically.
reality. That's it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thanks for sharing about the curriculum. It's amazing. I always wanted to know exactly what was involved in Buddhism. So you're studying this. What was going on in your life?
So like I said, I was I wasn't officially a monk, although I did the hair shaving thing. We did it symbolically. And I did take the vows, but I during this time I was living more disciplined as a monk than any monk I had met in India, pretty much. I mean, like the monks, you know, don't get me wrong, a lot of them are great practitioners, but these cell phones, these phones have changed everything. So all the monks have phones now.
And you
Even in two,
didn't, you said.
what's that? I didn't
And
even
you
have a
said you
phone.
didn't.
I
Yeah.
didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car. Like, yeah, I was really, and I didn't have a monastery. I was literally, doing this on my own, just, with Jim, living with Jim. And so yeah, I was living extremely disciplined. And, oh, sorry, let me just backtrack. So I made the decision that, I had nothing to lose at this point, so
Right.
I was like,
You had
let me,
nothing,
I
right?
had nothing. I said, let me see if this is true. So the Buddha's teaching, remember the path of accumulation, the first path, the Buddha's like, be generous, don't be stingy. And I had nothing. So I'm like, okay, I want to dig myself out of this hole. So I started I had very little. I would give to like a homeless person. And I would do it in the spirit of like, I'm creating good karma. I'm going against my gut, going against my fears. So, and I said, if this is true, and keep in mind, my life had just fallen apart. And instead of blaming and going to get a
Right.
job I hated, blaming my ex-girlfriends or my parents, I said, according to Buddha, this is all my past karma. If I'm feeling impoverished, it's because I took advantage of other people. If I got cheated on, it's because I cheated on other people. So let me own this. And I think you could almost say like that's going for refuge. You
Yeah.
really become a spiritual person when you start to own that everything that's happened to you, you caused it, which a lot of people don't like to hear.
Right.
But then again, not everybody's ready for this path. You know,
Right.
most people aren't in this, in this time. So I started, saying like, okay, I'm going to live this path. And sure enough, I was at rock bottom, and little by little, I started finding myself crawling out of it, opportunities happening, and gaining happiness, gaining more happiness. And so like I said, studying, like walking, reading, just totally living this. And then I would do a few retreats, and I wound up doing a retreat. So this is after I became very far along in the studies. Like this is like 4 or 5 years later. I went and did a retreat, and I was reading some advanced teachings, and I had this epiphany. Like I could still see it like it was yesterday. Um, where I realized that if I was born in Tibet and I told my parents I wanted to be a monk, they would be so joyful. The
Right.
whole society would be like, wonderful. My son's a monk, you know? Not only is he a monk, he's a geshe. He's going to become a geshe. It's incredibly big honor. In our culture, it's like you're a loser, right? Like you don't want to work, you don't want to be productive, you don't want to give to society. So I thought about that. And again, remember, half the path to get far along on the path, the fuel is helping others. So
Right.
I asked myself, if I go to India, I was ready to go at this point. If I go back to India, if I become a monk, how am I really going to be helpful? The people who need the help the most are right here in America. These people are suffering the most. I grew up in New York. I watched the movies that these people watched, like I could relate to these to America. So it kind of hit me that, wait a minute, like I could actually be, from selfish purposes, I can go faster on this path, not being a monk, staying in America, starting a business, interacting with everybody than if I was to become a monk. Like they even say that for more advanced, not to say that monks aren't advanced, but to take that, like if you're a monk, you basically create a situation where you eliminate obstacles to practicing as much as possible. Like if you want to study, you have access to libraries and teachers, and you're encouraged. But if you but at the problem with that is if you have some deep unconscious seated triggers, they're not likely going to come out, and they got to come out if you want to get to that diamond. So
Right.
I realized that actually staying in this suffering would be better. Would actually be
Okay.
better. So we describe, we call it the wheel of life, the Bhava chakra. Bhava means life, which sounds good. Oh, the wheel of life. No, when the Buddha talked about the wheel of life, this is the wheel of suffering. You're born
Okay.
as a human, you do your best, but out of some ignorance, you cheat someone. Now you're born as an animal, and then you get to be born as a high being, rich and powerful, living thousands of years. But that comes to an end. So the whole idea of the entry level teachings is become a monk. No, don't chase after money. Just get enough to get by, and work on yourself. The second level of teachings says was like don't be a monk, or don't be afraid of suffering. Don't be afraid of the wheel. The wheel is full of suffering, but it's a perfect teaching. It's a teacher. It's a school for you to learn. And the people, so the wheel that can help you grow, but also the people who are stuck in the wheel, who believe in the wheel, how are they going to get out if no one helped them? The Buddha died 2,500 years ago. So who am I to become a monk and leave these people? Who's going to help them? Because I got help from my teachers. So that's the second wheel, second way to see the wheel. But then there's a very advanced level of teaching called the Vajrayana, the indestructible wheel, also called Tantra. And this says that the wheel is neither good nor bad. The wheel is neutral. When you get to that diamond level of perception, the wheel is actually bliss. So so um so that was when I kind of had this epiphany that I'm going to, again, this is on a retreat. It wasn't fully like processed, but like I'm going to stick around. I'm going to meet people where they're at, and I'm going to help people, you know, not have to become a monk, and help them, achieve bliss.
The wheel of bliss.
The wheel of bliss, exactly.
So what year are we at here?
So this is like 2000, like maybe 2000, end of 2011.
So for 14 years, you've been thinking about the wheel of bliss.
Basically, yes.
Wow.
Actually, well, you know what? I'm kind of, I didn't quite formulate it yet. At that moment, I was really thinking more in terms of the second way of seeing the wheel, that like
Okay.
I shouldn't become a monk. It
Okay.
was actually another retreat I did. After, so I realized I didn't want to become a monk. I told Geshe-la that. I told him, like, I want to be a lama. What do I need to do? He's like, you come back to India, we'll give you the examinations, and then you can become a lama. Like, good. I don't want you to be a monk. This is great. You should stay in America. So then once I realized that, what do? I get a phone, I turn on the TV, like I completely start going, like realizing, oh, this is where I belong. And it felt good.
Okay.
And that's when I started reading all the self-help books, like Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm at. And so, and that's when I started to really formulate. It took me like a year to really formulate the wheel of bliss. Like,
Wow.
yeah, because I started realizing people basically, what are all these self-help things about? They're about abundance, right? Making money, like make not just money, but making money in a way that you enjoy. It was like finding love and community, like communication skills, emotional intelligence, right? Um, the third is like charisma, self-expression, and then the fourth is growth. And there was like this explosion at this time. Keep in mind, this is 2010 to
Yeah.
2011. This is when podcasting really took off.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to tons and tons of podcasts and stuff. And um, so that's when it kind of hit me on another retreat that I I want to teach people, instead of teaching them Buddhism, I'm going to teach people bliss. And if they're ready for Buddhism, they'll get the deeper implications. But if they're not, at least they'll have like this bliss, which is better than, typical stuff. Yeah. And then
Wow. So, well, you still, so you went back to India. I don't want to, I don't want to, I mean, you kind of just went beyond Buddhism, which is amazing, but so did you go back to India
yeah.
and you got,
So
so,
so
so
what
what was that
happened was
like?
so what happened was like I realized I needed to do a business. I heard this woman, happened to hear this woman on a radio. She had this book called The Millionaire Maker, and she said, "What do you do every day? Write down everything you do every day, because something there could make you like $100, like a couple $100 a week." And what do I do every morning? I was making tea and I was cooking. So I started a tea and spice business, organic tea and spice
Okay.
business.
Okay.
I told my parents, because when I had this epiphany, I reconnected with my parents. I told them like, "Oh, I want to do business," and then they were very happy that, and they helped me start this business. They helped invest a little, and so I'm doing this. I'm moving things along, but I still had to go take the examinations.
Okay.
So that was when I went back to India in 2013.
Okay. So 2013. So tell me about going back to India. What was that like taking examinations?
That was amazing. It was like, because I had been there with the monks, and I felt this deep emotional connection there. But
Right.
now here I am, studied for 5 years straight. You know, so now going back, like I had all, I just wanted to debate. I just wanted to get into it, and yeah, it was a great time. But in short, Geshe-la like made sure I knew everything and took me to his friends, other Geshes, and he'd be like, "Check out this guy." He showed me off a lot. He's like he gets it, like, like, and they're like, "How does he know all this stuff?" And I would go to many different monasteries, just debating different
That was
monks.
part of your examination? Was that the examination?
Yeah, yeah, that was part of the examination. But some of it was just on my own. I would just go off on my own to different
Okay.
monasteries. But most of the time it was with Geshe-la. I spent another 4 months in India this time, taking the examinations,
Okay.
passed it all, and they were like, "Okay." You would think you become a lama, like now they tell you what to do. They're just like, "All right, figure it out." Like you're qualified now. You could teach this stuff. Go do it.
So, okay, so 4 months you were there, you passed the examinations. Um, so when did like it don't they give you a name or how does that work
Right, right.
with
So yeah, I had a big ceremony, hundreds of monks, kind of doing their prayers for me and everything. And I was given the name Demchok, which means the wheel
okay.
of bliss. And keep in mind, I am in India the whole time I'm there. I'm writing down on pieces of paper this idea of the wheel of bliss. I didn't even call it the wheel of bliss yet. I've been practicing. So wheel of bliss, I think I said earlier, Demchok, or Sanskrit chakra samvara, is a practice of learning to see the wheel as blissful. Did I mention that
Wow.
earlier?
Wow, yeah,
The
yeah,
wheel
wow.
represents phenomena, the arising of phenomena, and so chakra samvara represents being able to turn every situation into bliss.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the first episode. Yeah, wow. So you're a llama
Yeah, so I'm
officially.
given the name, and that was when it all clicked. It's like, oh my God, this is like what I'm supposed to do. Like this whole wheel of bliss. Like I was given the name Demchuk. I'm working on this thing. It's got 12 parts. The the symbolic representation of this teaching has 12 arms. So
Wow.
so
Wow.
that was when I came back from India, more confused than ever, but at the same time, like, yeah, now I'm a lama and I'm ready to teach, but I ran into the issue of like, who wants to listen to me? Like,
Okay.
Like, so you know what I mean? Like, you're a lama, so what? It means nothing here.
Okay,
It
yeah.
means something to some people.
So next time, are we gonna hear about another master, meeting another master? It's about time, right?
Yeah, well, this is a yeah, coming back. You could say I've always been interested in the health and the body and nutrition, but coming back, I went deep into that area, into health and wellness until I met my master in that area.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for explaining this. I've always been interested in this, and I've heard people explain it, but I think it's one of these things where people didn't really understand what they're talking about, but to actually talk to a lama who can explain it. And I'm an engineer, so I actually like all the numbers and all the structure. So to me, I seem to get that pretty well. But that was I really appreciate it. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
It was a lot. You're great at what you do, obviously, and but I mean, I hope you like I didn't overdo it with all
Oh
the
no, this is amazing, man.
awesome.
I can't wait to talk next time.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
See you soon.